This is HighIntensityBusiness.com with Lawrence Neal, helping you achieve your health and fitness goals. Become a great personal trainer and build your high-intensity strength training business.
This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I have ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all of the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and get $500 off install when you place an order, please go to arxfit.com and mention HIB, that's High Intensity Business, in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $500 off install when you place an order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter HIB in the How Did You Hear About Us field. Lawrence Neal here, and welcome back to HighIntensityBusiness.com. This is episode 243. Today's guest is Luke Carlson. Luke is the founder and CEO of Discover Strength, a fast-growing personal training business with currently 5 facilities in Minnesota. Discover Strength offer a variety of strength training services and sessions facilitated by educated and expert trainers. Their personal training studios are among the highest volume and revenue training facilities in the United States. Luke, welcome back to the podcast.
Lawrence, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to get to be on the podcast and chat with you.
Likewise. And I was excited to be able to schedule this one because we were talking a while back and you said, you know what, Lawrence, I'd love to come on and just talk about strength training. You know, we talk a lot about business. You're obviously very knowledgeable when it comes to business and helping our fellow high intensity training business owners. But you're also enormously passionate about strength training. And so it's about time we probably checked in on that and just talked about how things may have changed for you and how you guys do things at Discover Strength. So I thought a good place to start would be, do you want to talk about how you train clients at Discover Strength these days? You know, what are the kind of principles that you follow and the programming and that kind of thing?
Absolutely. So maybe we'll start more general. So I would say it's a high intensity training approach. We like to say it's a high intensity training approach and it's an evidence-based approach. The only reason we have not abandoned the term high intensity training is I just think it's probably wise to honor your roots. I mean, when I learned or was exposed to this type of training, it was called high intensity training. And it came from Steve Wetzel, who was Dan Riley's assistant with the Washington Redskins and in the NFL. And Dan Riley was the one guy, the one person that Arthur Jones chose to teach everything he knew to. And he's the one that brought high intensity training to the athletic population. And so I've always kind of wanted to honor that. And I would say that today in 2019, is there a few elements of high intensity training as we've always known it that are maybe not incredibly evidence-based? Yeah, there's a couple. So we like to say that we're using an evidence-based approach and we don't want to be dogmatic about some of the elements
what ones
of
aren't
high intensity training.
Just curious.
Okay, so I would say that we probably don't have a lot of evidence to say that you have to rush between exercises, that there's cardiovascular benefit even if you don't rush between exercises. When it comes to strength and hypertrophy, you definitely don't have to rush between exercises. I would say that's one. I would say that there is, if you ask most high-intensity training practitioners today, that there's a certain amount of volume that you're supposed to do, and beyond that amount of volume, it's probably not beneficial. And I don't know if that's evidence-based. I think our volume can be quite a bit higher and stimulate hypertrophy and stimulate improvements in strength. I think there's a lack of evidence to say that a really well-designed machine with a perfect cam produces better results than weight. So that's hard to say out loud, but there's not evidence to suggest that a perfect cam on a perfect machine produces better results. And that's coming from someone who trains 98% on machines, but there's no evidence that they're superior.
Better results than what, like less lower quality machines or other modes of training like body weight and free weights, etc.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Just want to clarify that just in case people aren't on the same page. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but there are a couple that I think turn out to be more evidence-based than like Arthur Jones would have ever guessed. So, one of those is training to failure. There's just way more evidence on training to failure, and there's more evidence on the multitude of benefits that are stimulated by training to failure that Arthur Jones would have, just wasn't onto at all, which is awesome. So I would say he was more right on training to failure than he ever would have imagined. So there's plenty of evidence to support so many of the classic tenets. And then I think a lot of it is mindset. I mean, the mindset of high intensity training when it was introduced to me in the 90s was, hey, let's just get away from the dogmatic thought that free weights are superior to machines. You could judiciously use both. Oh, okay. And it's almost swung where a high-intensity training practitioner is in constant pursuit of the perfect tool. And that's never how I was introduced to it. It was, hey, we can use free weights and machines and body weight and manual resistance as long as we apply the right technique and the right principles, so forth. So.
Awesome. Did you want to continue talking about, because I know you want to start with high level principles, but do you want to sort of go into some of the details of how you train clients?
I didn't do a very good job. Answering that question. Yeah. So generally we always recommend 2 workouts per week. Occasionally someone will sneak in a third, but it's because they trained on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off, train on Thursday, Friday, Saturday off, and Sunday is their next workout. We used to disallow someone to come in unless they had the 2 full days of rest in between. We will now let someone sneak in if it's Thursday and they trained and they want to get in Saturday, we will let them get that workout in, but we'll always say, just don't make a habit of it. You generally are going to want more recovery than this. Most of our clients, when they start with us now, start at 2 times a week. But for many, many, many years, we gave them the option 1 or 2 times per week. And a lot of people opted for 1. It's been very hard over the years, the last 13 years, to get those people to change from once a week to twice per week. I mean, we've literally, we give seminars on it. We've had James Fisher and James Steele in town giving seminars about how you could probably train more often. And our clients are just a little bit reluctant if they were taught once per week to increase. So, but on average right now, when we start someone, they do start at twice per week. So a workout is generally 10 or 11 exercises, generally 4 leg exercises, 4 to 5 upper body exercises, and 1 or 2 midsection exercises. One workout will generally have an abdominal flexion and a back extension, while the other workout will have the medics torso rotation. So if you're doing torso rotation, you're generally just doing torso rotation and not the others. Now, there's exceptions to that where some people may have all 3 movements in a given workout. But the reason we do 4 leg exercises in each workout is we've always wanted to be comprehensive and all the different articulations. So if you read like our core process of how to write workouts, is you have to include all 7 conceivable anatomical leg movements in your workout design, which if you're going to do 7, that means you need 7 leg exercises between the 2 workouts. And then we generally add an 8th. So we want knee extension, we want flexion, so a leg extension and a leg curl. And we want a plantar flexion and a dorsiflexion. So we want calf and tibia. So we're at 4 movements right now. We want a hip abduction and a hip adduction. So you're at 6 movements right there. And then we want a hip extension, which would be like a leg press or a ball squat or a lunge. So, and generally both of our workouts have a leg press or a multi-joint leg movement. So that's how you get to 8. So I just really believe that you can't have comprehensive leg training If you just did 2 to 3 leg exercises per workout, and that's all you rotated through, you can have very effective leg training. You just can't have comprehensive. You're just missing out on particular muscles that are just not receiving direct stimulation. Like I think one of the only definitely male advocates for performing adductor. I just think adductor is so underutilized by so many trainees, and we're never going to design workouts that don't have adductor. The exception to that would be if there's some type of injury. And then
Can we
upper body
just pause there for a second, Luke, because I've got so many questions, and otherwise I don't know what's better, to let you just go and then ask you questions afterwards, or interrupt you rudely.
Interrupt me. Yeah.
So I want to actually this would be good timing. So it's interesting because it would seem to me, I don't know if you agree with me on this, that you differ from a lot of the other high intensity training practitioners and business owners in terms of volume. You know, I think immediately of Dr. Doug McGuff. Obviously, Doug hates the fact that people always associate him with the big five and think that that's all he thinks is effective, and any more than that is erroneous. But that is simply not the case, as Doug's constantly stated. However, it would seem to me that you and Doug differ somewhat on recommendations for volume within sessions. Is that fair to say? Do you think you generally advocate more exercises than most?
I guess I don't know where everybody else is or where he is, but maybe yes. Well, so I would say yes or no. It depends the faction of HIIT. So there's kind of 2 factions of high intensity training that emerged. And your podcast, in my opinion, very represents the Ken Hutchins, Doug McGuff influenced super slow big five. I've read Body by Science approach, but then, I mean, most of the high intensity training world was really influenced by Arthur Jones and then Dan Riley and Matt Brisky at Princeton and Ellington Darden. And so, I mean, there was thousands of more high intensity training practitioners that kind of came from that. I don't want to say upbringing, but that influence. And that was very much, 10, 15, 20 exercises. I mean, I have a manual in front of me of all of my workouts from 1998, 99, 2000, when I was with the Minnesota Vikings, and we did 20 to 22 exercises in every workout. Now, we also counted neck flexion as one exercise, neck extension as one exercise, etc. But the idea was we just want to be a little bit more comprehensive. And the other thing that we talked about then, and this was athletic population, is we never, ever would say something like a big 3 or a big 5, because what originally was the big 3? I mean, the big 3 to the whole strength training world in the 70s and 80s and probably even the 60s was the bench press, the squat, and the deadlift. So before I ever got into high intensity training, it was, hey, we're doing the big 3, is bench, squat, and deadlift is what you had to get good at. And that's then I learned, when I got into high intensity training, we never say big 3 or big 5 if you want to include a hang clean or power clean, because we want to look at every exercise as the exact same importance, with the exception of neck. Neck is the most important. Everything else is the same level of importance. And that was all from an athletic background. And that's because, hey, if a structure has a risk of injury, a potential for injury, then the exercise that would prevent that injury is just as important as any other exercise. So we looked at an external rotation exercise or a posterior deltoid exercise as equally as important to a leg press, a chest press, etc. So a lot of that was just kind of how you were brought into it. Volume was very much a part of that we just did a little bit of higher volume. So if the rest of the world's doing 5 or 6 exercises, we're definitely doing more volume than that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You've only really just made me realize that you're quite right. That, I didn't really realize that those 2 factions were separate in terms of the super slow Ken Hutchins side and the Ellington Darden, Arthur Jones. I know there's obviously some crossover and inspiration. Both sides have been inspired by the other, I'm sure. But I had not thought about it like that, and you're quite right. And I think that's what's interesting is when I started the show, obviously I was heavily influenced by Doug McGuff, and so probably quite biased. And if you go back to early episodes and probably even recently, you hear me kind of challenging a lot of the higher volume, higher frequency advocates. So that's quite interesting, just to kind of look back and see that kind of confirmation bias at work almost. So I just wanted to also go back to what you were saying there about frequency. you were talking about how occasionally you allow clients to train 3 times a week, and with only one day's rest between the second and third workout. Now, and you said, you kind of tell the client not to make this a habit. Is the theory around that based on the fact that overtraining is a process and not an event? So they might be able to get away with it for 1 or 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, but then the wheels fall off. And so it's best to then ebb back down to two times a week, in your experience?
Yes, but it's also combined. Yeah, everything you said, I just wholeheartedly agree with. But it's also combined with some of the research James Fisher continues to present, saying we probably could get away with a little bit more frequency than we realize. But I always question that research because I just know how those workouts are unfolding in that research. And I know how we're training people. I mean, I just can't read a research study that says, hey, 3 times a week is going to be okay, is going to be optimal. And I know how we train people. I mean, you just could not train 3 times a week consistently the way we train people. And there's all different approaches to high intensity training. And I think there is probably an approach where you could get away with 3 times a week. But I just think that's where common sense comes in. And we're just trying to blister people. And I just don't think there's enough recovery from how hard we're pushing beyond the point of failure.
Yeah, I was in Brighton on the weekend, and a friend of mine, Matt Nairn, has a gym there called Mint Fitness, and he's a high intensity training guy. And he's not got he's maybe. No, I wouldn't say he's got as many machines or as much kit as even your smaller studios, Luke, which are kitted out of a lot of machines. But he's got a lot more kit than I have, right? We were able to do, as well, certainly for me, a relatively high volume workout with around 8 to 10 exercises. But there was a bit of we didn't do rush factor. So there was a bit of a break in between. I was with a friend as well. And so we both had time to sort of rest between exercises. And I've always complained about, or not complained, but been surprised that people like you and James and others can cope with such high volumes, from my perspective, or as far as I'm concerned, in your training. But then I think I've always looked at it through the lens of you're rushing between exercises. But when you have that, I guess, more of a leisurely pace, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, maybe longer in between exercises, it makes a high volume workout far more feasible. At least with machines, I find that's different with body weight. I think with body weight, where movements can be so challenging and involve so many muscles, like if you're doing push-ups and chin-ups and single-legged squats, it just involves so much that you can be, personally, I will get so exhausted from that. Whereas obviously a machine enables you to isolate a little bit more. And so, you're able to perhaps cope with that greater volume because of that as well. So do you agree with that? Does that make sense from your experience?
I think the rest probably helps. But I mean, I've had trainers put me through workouts at different studios that are up to 20 exercises with, rushing from exercise to exercise. And those are brutally tough workouts. And I've only vomited one time in the last 15 years from anything, from illness, from a workout. And that was from one of those workouts. I was in Chicago and got trained by Dan Gerasi and was with 2 of my staff and got done with the workout and went outside, and there was a fence by a gas station in Chicago, big city. And I was just puking my guts out. And there was a really kind homeless guy who was watching me. He knew I was about to puke. And he just said, man, you just got to let it go. Just let it go. Don't hold it back. And so that was definitely stimulated by a very high level of intensity on each set, very little rest in between, and a lot of exercises overall. But I think it's worth mentioning, Lawrence, that when I was drawn to high intensity training, there was no talk about this is a time efficient way to get your workouts in. It's only evolved into that, I think, in the last, 10 years or 20 years. I was never looking at a way to save time in my workouts. Are you kidding me? Like, if there was a workout that was better, that was 3 hours a day, I wanted to do it. The draw of high intensity training, the allure of high intensity training was you get the most out of this set. You could get more fiber and motor unit recruitment. You could optimize the stimulus. So it was how you performed your sets, take them to failure. You could use a different tool that would produce better results. Okay, so let's find the perfect machine. You could use techniques at the point of muscle failure. You could use techniques shy of muscle failure, like pre-exhaust, that would pose a more effective stimulus. That's what it was all about. It wasn't about the volume being less. I mean, the volume was less because previously, if I was doing 40 sets in a workout, to cut to 18 sets, that was definitely lower volume. But the goal wasn't how can I work out less? The goal was how can I work out more effectively? And it just so happened that instead of doing 3 or 5 sets and everything, it happened to drop to 1 set. And so my framework of why high intensity training is important, the lead was never it's a shorter workout. And I think that's been the lead for so many of our businesses today because that really appeals to the customer. But I give a 3-hour talk on exercise to groups of executives all over North America. And I do it, you get on a plane once a week and do it somewhere. And in that 3-hour talk, when I summarize, I say, we have just presented a palatable approach to really effective exercise. I mean, it's short, it's going to fit in your busy lifestyle as an executive. However, do not misconstrue it. If you had no job, you're unemployed, and you had all the time in the world to work out, I would still recommend the same workout. So I'm not saying you should do this just because it fits in your schedule. I'm saying this turns out to probably be the optimal, or as far as we know, in 2019, an optimal stimulus for strength, hypertrophy, downstream chronic disease prevention, etc.
These talks you give, I've not seen you market about that. So is that who do you do that through?
There's something called Vistage, which is worldwide. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it's Vistage. I'm in a Vistage group myself, and I do a decent amount of Vistage speaking, and they're fun because they're workshops and they're small. It's 15 executives in a group, and there's a lot of interaction. And for 3 hours, I mean, you have to be interactive, otherwise you bore the heck out of people. So we go back and forth with the executives and just talk about exercise for 3 hours.
Cool. This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, ARX. Are you looking to create a cutting-edge, high-intensity training facility? Are you confused on what equipment to use or how to separate yourself from the masses? Well, then ARX Fit might be the answer you're looking for. I asked Mike Polano from ARX a few questions about how ARX machines are challenging the status quo of the exercise industry around the globe. Mike, if you could, give the listeners a quick summary of why ARX is so different from the traditional machines or tools they're used to seeing in most exercise facilities.
ARX is totally different than anything you've seen before. This isn't just another weight stack machine. We've looked at the last 40 years of exercise technology and used that knowledge to create something entirely new. ARX uses a new form of resistance, a motor, and we pair that motor with computer software so that we can maximize the safety, effectiveness, and efficiency of your workouts. So you may be asking, okay, but how does ARX compare to weights? Traditional machines you see in gyms today are based on lifting metal weights and battling gravity. What people don't realize is that when you're forced to lift a static weight like this, one that doesn't adapt or change while you use it, you're underloading yourself rep after rep. And this unnecessarily limits your ability to make improvements. With ARX, we've taken a totally different approach. We removed weights and gravity from the equation altogether. Instead, ARX combines our patented motorized resistance with our custom computer software to provide you with the world's safest, most effective, and most quantified form of resistance training ever. When you train with ARX, you are training to your perfect level of resistance, both positively and negatively 100% of the time. No more guessing what weight to use. ARX does all of that for you, instantly and automatically. We'll also track and measure every second of every rep, so you can quantify all of your workouts to find out if you're improving and by exactly how much. Whether your goals are bigger muscles, increased strength, stronger bones, or just to look good in a bathing suit, ARX can help you achieve all of these and more, but do so in a fraction of the time it would take compared to traditional equipment. If you're looking for the most efficient, most effective, and most quantified piece of exercise equipment on the market today, then look no further than ARX.
Thanks, Mike. That all sounds really impressive. If you'd like to learn more about ARX, visit arxfit.com and mention that you heard about ARX on the High Intensity Business podcast to receive an exclusive deal of $500 off shipping and installation of your ARX machines. So something I wanted to ask you, which is a little bit changing gears slightly. So I was using the Nautilus Nitro leg press on Saturday, and I think I have used it before, either at maybe one of your facilities or I think at Ted Harrison's facility at Vital Exercise in the UK, perhaps. But I hadn't used it for a very long time, and I was very excited to use it because I'd been talking to Bill Simone quite a lot about it recently. And I really enjoyed it. I think it's a wonderful machine. I haven't used a MedX leg press recently, and so I would like to have the opportunity to actually really compare those. But one thing I did notice is I had really strong acute discomfort in my, I want to say inner thigh, like maybe, I don't know if it was in the quadriceps, like, is it the rectus femoris muscle or the quadricep? Yep. But it was like inside my thighs, and it was just like so bad that I just had to take a moment and just sort of sit there. And I was sitting there on the Nautilus Nitro overhead press, and I was like, I can't start this while this is still lingering. You know, have you ever had that from clients or from yourself or from colleagues on that machine?
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's described it just like that, but that's a good articulation. We do have it. We only have one of them, so that's one leg press that we don't have a lot of. And I kind of echo. I've seen the things that Bill said about it, and that you've commented on it. So I would echo everything that Bill says, but I guess I've never heard the exact description that you're providing.
No problem. It was just a very strange sensation that I've not experienced on leg press for a long time. It must have had something to do with the intensity and the degree of which I trained probably to and past failure with people watching me. And, you know, when you're in that setting, as you always go on about the importance of supervision, it's far more easy to feel motivated to go that hard in your training. So maybe it has something to do with that. But yeah, it was just an interesting experience. Okay, just going back to frequency for a moment. This is interesting to me. I was sitting down with Sean, my business partner, recently discussing our new facility, and we were talking about frequency, and we both disagreed with each other on various aspects. He was kind of the opinion, as being a big, body by science devotee, that twice a week, from his perspective, was too much, and he was talking from the perspective of what he's read, but more so anecdotally by his own experience, because he was training twice a week, and then reduced that to once a week. And there is obviously an element of, well, that's the N of one. It's not representative of the whole population. And he probably realizes that. But he was skeptical whether, twice a week would be productive for most people. And what's interesting with you is you've got all this data and experience training people twice a week with relatively high volume, right? So what, the people at your place that are training twice a week, what is the average number of exercises they'll do total per week for you?
20 to 22. Wow. But when you think about volume, remember a lot of it's systemic. It's not for the same muscle group, but a lot of it maybe doesn't have just this incredible global metabolic effect. Like if you're doing an anterior tibialis exercise, is that really just devastating your entire physiology? And like, I can't recover it because I recover from this really intense set of tibia that I did. And I just don't think that's the case. Or even a calf exercise. And we want to be comprehensive and train all those structures. And so we might do a neck exercise where somebody else might not, and an anterior tibialis exercise or a calf exercise. And so we just think that's comprehensive training. But I also don't think it's really inroading into someone's overall recovery ability if you look at a week period. So we're adding volume, but we're not adding volume in a way. It's not like we're throwing in, just extra chest exercises.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But do you ever have any exceptions to the twice a week rule where you have people who maybe start with twice a week, but they do struggle to recover enough to continue to make progress or even maintain progress in that second workout and then reduce them to once a week? Does that ever happen?
No, if they ever reduce, it's due to like life. It's due to, hey, twice a week. It's just hard for me to get in. It generally drops to once a week because of travel and things like that. And maybe even money, that they don't want to spend the money to come in twice per week. But it's never, I shouldn't say never, it is rarely ever related to results. And I always think the best litmus test there is your own trainers. So we have so many trainers, and our trainers are like a great example because they're basically perfect in their commitment to training. Like they're going to do all the things right in their workouts. And so like what do they choose to do? And like 95% of our trainers will train twice per week. I mean, we have a few trainers that haven't had a week go by without 2 workouts in years and years and years. I mean, never miss a single workout. And then there's some that are probably closer to 1.5 times a week on average, but most are aiming for 2. And the reason I use them as an example is it's not money. Money's not the reason. It's not travel schedule. It's what produces the best results in their estimation. And clearly it's still a small sample size. It's, maybe 40 trainers, but I think it's noteworthy. It's what is an educated person who has time and has the resources to do a workout when they want to, what are they choosing to do?
Yeah, no, that is really interesting. It's just thing is that I'm curious about is I'm sure you get your critics, Luke, about he trains. There might be people listening to this going, of course he wants you to train twice a week. It's more lucrative. But I'm sure that's obviously. I know you well, and I know that you're always thinking about what's best for the customer first, and. But I'm just curious how when you listen to the likes of, John Little, and I'm pretty sure he touched on this in his latest book, and obviously him and Doug have talked about Embodied by Science, talking about, just how long they believe it takes for someone to recover in certain contexts. How do you personally, having had the experience that you just shared, how do you reconcile that with the frequency that you advocate at Discover Strength? Like, how do you think about that?
Well, I mean, it's a number of things, but the first thing I think is an evidence-based approach. And then it's always the litmus test to test my own assumptions around, am I doing this because it's a business decision? And so how do I understand if it's a business decision? How do I challenge my thought process? I think about what I tell my parents to do, what I tell my siblings to do, what I do in my own workouts, what our staff do. Like I make no money off of any of those people. And what would I tell them to do? And then it's conversations with my closest colleagues that are in the world of research. And that's James Fisher would be one of them is what is your frequency like? And James will tell you he will always strength train 2 to 3 times per week, total body workouts. I mean, he's just not going to train once a week or once every 10 days. And he's doing that, well, one, because he likes to train, but he's doing it primarily because there's just the evidence suggests that we can train more frequently. I've had periods where I've trained once every 10 days myself, and I still think that's really valuable, but I just think that more frequent produces better results. But let's keep this all in perspective. That's still twice a week is still considered incredibly infrequent to the rest of the strength training world. It's just in our small end of a small spectrum where we think that twice a week is high frequency.
Yeah, and I train more often now, probably around twice a week on average. I'm just very curious, always interested in talking about that difference that I see in the different perspectives in high intensity training. One thing I really want to ask you about, Luke, which I think is going to be really valuable certainly for me and for those listening, is this idea that you seem to be very good at getting your clients to train with a high level of intensity and to failure. You've even got one of your pillars in your strength training, which is excellent at failure. How do you help clients get there with motivation or instruction and advanced techniques and things like that? But I talk to a lot of people in this who believe that some people just can't get there. Some people just can't train that hard and never will be able to train to failure. It's just great that they come in and work out, almost like giving up on getting them to that level of intensity. And I appreciate that can be challenging perhaps for some people, but so with you guys, it seems slightly different. So how do you think about that? And am I right in thinking that almost all your clients train really hard?
Yeah. Great question. So I think so, yes. I think that if we have a problem, it's that we don't push some of our people hard enough. If you look at all of our new trainers, the feedback they get from our clients is this new trainer doesn't push me hard enough. We constantly look at a new 23-year-old trainer and say the thing you're going to struggle with the most is you're not going to know how to push a 65-year-old hard enough. And that's invariably what happens, because to a 23-year-old, when they look at a 65-year-old, they look at, oh, this is my grandma. My grandma just could not be pushed this hard. And in fact, that 65-year-old trains harder and wants to train harder than that 23-year-old had ever trained in their life before they came to discover strength. So I would say we're not trying to push intensity on someone. So when we do a check-in with someone in their progress assessment workout, which occurs after 10 sessions, and then every 20 sessions after that, we ask just 4 questions. And one of those questions is, how do you feel about the intensity of the workout? And then here's how we frame it up. Should we be pushing you a teeny bit harder? Should we be pushing you not quite so hard because you're actually fearing your workouts? Or should we keep it right where it is? And more often than not, people say, you can push me a little bit harder. Or they say, pretty much keep it the same, although a few new trainers need to push me harder. We never hear, you're pushing me too hard. I'm fearing my workouts. Because I want to be aware of that, because I just don't think it's conducive to retaining a customer if they feel like, oh God, at 5 p.m. tonight, I have to go in and just get the tar beat out of me and I'm just fearing my workout. I don't want that to negatively impact our retention. And it really has not. And that seems to be across the board, from a 20-year-old client to a 75-year-old client. People suggest that they want to be pushed harder. So we're just trying to listen to the customer. Listen to the customer. The customer will tell you, I want to be pushed harder. And so we've learned that over many, many, many years of doing that. And of course, we're pushing people hard because we think it produces better results. And we think we have to demonstrate, why do you have a trainer versus could you do this workout by yourself? From a business standpoint, if you're providing a workout that someone could do by themselves, they understand that. And one piece of feedback that's valuable to us that we get when we have clients train at other high intensity training facilities around the country is when they come back to us, they say, I like that place, but they just don't push me hard enough. And so we always make note of that. And by the way, I'm sure that when our clients go train at other studios, there's things that they say that Discover Strength could do a lot better. And I'm completely aware of that. I'm specifically not aware of what they're saying because we'd go to work on it if I were, but I'm sure that's happening. I just know that when we get our clients back from these other locations or when they come from these other businesses, the feedback we always get is, I'm just not pushed as hard at that particular location. And I think intensity is the top 3 most important things you can do to retain a client. Is if you push a client harder, you will retain that client. So, I love Doug McGuff to death, but I think one of the things that he said that was incorrect, either he said it or maybe I'm being influenced by Steve Ritz, who you've had on the podcast. He said something very similar, maybe 20 years before Doug, that high intensity training will never be popular because people just don't want to work that hard. And I just think that's turned out to be completely wrong. The most popular exercise, that we have out there is just hard work. And CrossFit's shown us that. Say what you want about CrossFit, but the CrossFit involves hard work. It's a different kind of hard work. I understand it's not constant tension on a muscle hard work, but it's hard work and it's really popular. And I think that if you're pushing people hard enough, it's really conducive to growing your sales. And people always ask me the question, what's the marketing technique that you use? What can we do from a business standpoint to grow our business? And I just feel silly because it's just not marketing. With respect to Hannah, it's just not some knowledge of business. It's push people harder and care more about form. It's those 2 things. If you want your business to grow massively, let me just say 3 things. It's push people harder, have better form, and give better instruction around positive specific feedback and corrective specific feedback. Combine all that with variation in the exercise stimulus, and that's how you grow a high intensity training business. Forget all business elements. It's just about training. It's just about workouts. So I just kind of went down a rabbit hole there. But
no, that was great. I bet you feel like a broken record when people ask you for marketing tactics, don't you? Because you come back to the fundamentals.
here's what it comes down to: is no one cares about Discover Strength's workouts. I mean, people visit us from all over the country and all over the world all the time. And they say, "Well, teach us about the business." And I just say, "Do you really think that it's just the business? You don't think it's the product? You don't think it's workouts?" But no one wants to learn about the workouts, which I just think is fascinating. So
yeah, I do too. I do. And for those listening, if you're interested in a detailed breakdown, almost like checklist style, of what Luke said in terms of how the trainers deliver an incredible interaction experience for their customers, and not only with regard to the workout, but also how they're greeted and spoken to, and how they understand their needs and consult them and things like that. David Schneider, who is Luke's Vice President of Operations, if I've got that right.
correct.
Yeah. Who's currently, I believe, on his honeymoon. Is that right?
He is. He's in Italy right now.
So he's having a great time. Hopefully his DOMs have worn off from his pre-wedding workout.
I think probably barely at this point, because that was a brutal workout.
But what I was going to go on to say is, if people are interested in that checklist and in content around that, we've done some excellent work in the membership, and where we help you build a profitable and successful high-intensity training business. And you can find out more about that at highintensitybusiness.com/membership. Luke, I want to be respectful of your time. This was really, really interesting and useful, and it was good to be able to talk about this stuff again. Do you have any parting thoughts about this that you want to share before we wrap up?
No, I think we covered a lot of it, Lawrence. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And the best way for people to find out more about you?
Discoverstrength.com. They can always shoot me an email if they have a specific question. And we obviously love any of your listeners to come to the Resistance Exercise Conference. And I think it's a great opportunity to come together and share ideas. And, when you say that, do I have any parting thoughts? Let me just throw this one thing out there. Yeah. Well, I think one of the most undervalued approaches to learning more about high intensity training is being trained by other trainers. I remember sitting down with Dr. Ted Lamborghini's, who I just think is brilliant, and we were listing all the people that we've been trained by. And everywhere Ted goes, he wants to be trained by someone. And I always want to be trained by someone. I think that's how you learn. And I just think that's something that's died a little bit, is going somewhere and being trained by someone. And you just mentioned it. I'm assuming your friend, it's Matt, right? Matt probably took you through a workout. Yeah. And that's how you learn. Like, I would never show up somewhere and decline a workout. In fact, I will plan all of my trips around who can take me through a workout. I think about in the last year, I went to Fred Hahn's studio and was trained by one of his trainers. And Fred asked me ahead of time, "Do you have any requests or anything you want to do?" And I said, "I want the slow burn experience. I want your trainer to train me exactly how you would train a client." And I've been trained by Bill Crawford, and I've been trained specifically by James Fisher. And I said, "James, you pick the workout. You pick every exercise, how you want me to do it, everything." And just everywhere I go, if Jim Flanagan's going to train me, which he does at least 2-3 times in a year, is I want you to tell me the exact exercises, the order. You tell me exactly what to do, and I want to listen. I think that's how you learn, and that's how you gain a little bit of inspiration, and you understand different techniques and different approaches. And so, if I have a parting, thought, it's we can probably improve our training a little bit by being trained by other people, and just abandon the mindset that I know how I want to work out. I know how I want my clients to work out. I just need to learn a little bit more about business. Well, my goodness, learn how to work out from colleagues and peers in our industry.
I fully agree. And I just want to add one quick thing. You're absolutely right. I went to see Matt for a couple of reasons. He's a good friend of mine. But I also wanted to experience a workout from him, and I was like, please just, I said, I have 2 requirements. I want the best pump ever, and I want to try all of your equipment. And he was like, okay, those were the restrictions. And then he just created a plan, and we went through it. It was great. And I was listening to how he coached me, and everything he said, and in terms of trying to obviously bring that into my own training. And talking about the Resistance Exercise Conference, I can tell you for a fact that and this is testament to what you said about the importance of being trained by others, is Sean Dunleavy, my business partner, who came with me to Rec 2019, had a workout with obviously all your team during the early morning workout, and was so impressed by that I would say that is a single thing that has had more influence on his desire to start his own business than anything else he's experienced. Maybe bar some of the stuff Doug's written about and spoke about reversing chronic disease and really improving people's health. But those were the key things, and that really stood out for me. Just how inspired he was, and how he could see how valuable supervised high intensity training is. So I totally second what you're saying, and I think it's really important that we all go to each other's studios and get a workout from one another and learn from one another. And for everybody listening, and to find the blog post for this episode, please go to highintensitybusiness.com and search for episode 243. And until next time, thank you very much for listening.
Discover how to achieve your health and fitness goals, become a great personal trainer, and build a successful high-intensity training business. Check out highintensitybusiness.com. highintensitybusiness.com.
This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I have ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all of the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and get $500 off install when you place an order, please go to arxfit.com and mention HIB, that's High Intensity Business, in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $500 off install when you place an order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter HIB in the How Did You Hear About Us field.